President Obama says he won't give in to extortion from the Republicans, but the House Speaker says that's a demand for a GOP surrender. All that said, is there a short-term exit ramp in the making? This is Special Report. Good evening, I'm Brett Baer. An early morning telephone call, dueling statements, and then reporter questions and answers, and still a standoff tonight. President Obama says he's willing to talk about anything, even his health care law, but ransom-demanding Republicans have to end the government shutdown and vote for a clean debt ceiling increase first. House Speaker John Boehner on Capitol Hill says he will not agree to an unconditional surrender. Chief White House correspondent Ed Henry has tonight's top story.
Well, I apologize that you have to go through this stuff every 3 months, it seems like. And Lord knows I'm tired of it.
Looking straight into the camera and apologizing to the American people over what he called nonsense, President Obama for the first time offered Republicans a way out of the budget standoff, declaring he will sit for negotiations over the federal budget as well as his health care law if Speaker John Boehner will pass legislation reopening the government and extending the debt ceiling for just a few months or even a few weeks.
Absolutely. I mean, what I've said is that I will talk about anything. My suggestion to the Speaker has been and will continue to be, let's stop the excuses. Let's take a vote in the House. Let's end this shutdown right now. Let's put people back to work.
Barely an hour later, Boehner said he agrees the nation should pay its bills, but suggested a phone call with the president earlier in the day went badly.
What the president said today was, if there's unconditional surrender by Republicans, he'll sit down and talk to us. That's not the way our government works. We can't raise the debt ceiling without doing something about what's driving us to borrow more money and to live beyond our means. The idea that we should continue to spend money that we don't have and give the bill to our kids and our grandkids would be wrong.
That Republican insistence on attaching spending cuts or other matters to the debt ceiling was rejected again by the president, who warned of dire consequences in world markets.
They're aware of the fact that I'm not budging when it comes to the full faith and credit of the United States. That has to be dealt with.
Throughout the day, Republicans stepped up their attacks over the president's approach so far.
This president's not leading. It's his way or the highway. He simply tells the Congress, I'm not going to negotiate. I'm not going to change anything. That's not leadership.
The president offered a contradictory message at an hour-long news conference. On one hand, insisting he is ready to talk with the GOP, even as he continued to slam Republicans as hostage takers and extortionists, language unlikely to get them to rush to the negotiating table.
If reasonable Republicans want to talk about these things again, I'm ready to head up to the Hill and try. I'll even spring for dinner again. But I'm not going to do it until the more extreme parts of the Republican Party stop forcing John Boehner to issue threats about our economy. We can't make extortion routine as part of our democracy.
And the president may not have won very many votes by initially suggesting he may not have any flaws before catching himself.
I think the American people understand, I have flaws. Michelle will tell you. One of them is not that I'm unwilling to compromise.
Now, after Boehner's news conference, top White House aide Dan Pfeiffer tweeted out that closing the government and defaulting appears to be the Republican path forward. A reminder that for all the talk about compromise, these two sides are still very far apart, Brett.
One thing, Ed, about this news conference, struck by, obviously no questions about the president's health care law. That was interesting. But secondly, no questions about Senator Obama voting in 2006 against raising the debt ceiling back then.
That's right. Now, the president and his aides have previously said that the difference between then and now is that this was a protest vote because there was no threat of default. And so the president was just speaking his mind, protesting Bush policies, but was not bringing the nation to default. But in fact, when you go back and check the record, that vote in the Senate in 2006 was 52-48 in favor of raising the debt ceiling. That's pretty close. You change a couple of votes either way, and then all of a sudden you could be going into default. So interesting, president wasn't asked about that, wasn't challenged on anything like that, even though he got, I think by my count, 11 questions. Pretty interesting, Brett.
Yeah. Ed Henry live on the North Lawn. Ed, thank you. House Republicans are trying an incremental approach to reopening some parts of the government, but they're running into a political brick wall. Chief Congressional Correspondent Mike Emanuel is on the Hill with that story. Good evening, Mike.
Well, good evening, Brett. The brick wall being Democrats saying reopen the government and raise the debt ceiling, and then they will talk. The House has passed a series of mini funding bills to make sure money goes to causes with wide bipartisan support. For example, so veterans can receive their benefits, national parks and monuments are reopened, funding for the children's program Head Start, medical research at NIH, and more. Today, President Obama was asked why not sign them to fund at least part of the government now.
You'd like to think that you could solve at least some of the problem if you couldn't solve all of it. But here's the problem. What you've seen are bills that come up wherever Republicans are feeling political pressure, they put a bill forward.
Meanwhile, the House is moving forward with legislation to set up a new working group to sit down and discuss fiscal matters such as the debt ceiling. Republicans would get 6 members from the House and 4 from the Senate, while Democrats would get 6 members from the Senate and 4 from the House. House Speaker John Boehner says the time to talk is now.
All we're asking for is to sit down and have this conversation. There's no reason to make it more difficult to bring people to the table. And so there's no boundaries here. There's nothing on the table. There's nothing off the table.
In the Senate, Democrats are planning a vote on a clean debt ceiling extension. While Republicans are hoping to negotiate, the Senate Majority Leader is hoping pressure is building on other Republicans to end the standoff.
This is our job to legislate. It's always been our job, always will be our job. Open the government, pay our bills, let's negotiate.
Talk we should. The American people have given us divided government. And when you have divided government, it means you have to talk to each other.
There are small private conversations going on between members here on the Hill trying to pitch solutions to one another. But as many from both parties have told me, this place runs on deadlines, and so far nobody is feeling intense heat. Brett?
Nothing on the table, nothing off the table. Right now, Mike, there's no table.
Exactly right.
Thank you, Mike. Stocks were down again today. The Dow lost 160. The S&P 500 dropped 21. The Nasdaq was off 76. The government says most of you will pay more for heat this winter based on supply and demand. Households using natural gas will see a 13% increase from last year. For electricity, a 2% hike. Heating oil customers should see their bills drop 2%. We are 1 full week into the Obamacare health insurance exchanges. It's been 7 days of technical glitches, parsed words about sign-ups, and in the minds of many, broken promises. Here's Chief National Correspondent Jim Engel.
President Obama has made many promises about his signature health care plan, but one of the simplest was an assurance it would lower national health care spending and save every family thousands of dollars.
Comprehensive health care reform, so that we can do what I pledged to do as a candidate and save a typical family an average of $2,500 on their health care costs in the coming years.
But government actuaries have reached a different conclusion, finding that Obamacare will increase health care spending by $621 billion over 10 years.
Now we're seeing the official scorekeepers of health spending saying, hey, it's going up, not down.
They've made it very clear in their projections that the health care law did not bend the cost curve down, it bent it up, that there will be increases in national health spending associated with the implementation of the health care law.
And other analysts say there is no mystery to increasing costs. That's the way the law was structured.
We're adding more people to the rolls. More people have insurance. We're insisting that those who have insurance have more generous coverage. So, of course, people are going to spend more. If people spend more, the premiums are going to go up.
Supporters of the law, however, argue 2 factors will help hold down costs, starting with the exchanges.
There are going to be a lot of plans that people can choose from, and so there'll be competition among these plans.
Not only that, taxpayer subsidies will lower the cost for some.
Very significant subsidies that will be provided to people to help them pay for their premiums.
Last night, however, late-night host Jon Stewart pressed Health and Human Services Secretary Kathleen Sebelius about the price increases many families are facing.
But there are people that will end up in difficult times having to spend money they would not have spent, yes, to buy health care if they did not have it. if they did not want to?
There are people who will, yes, pay money, and many of them will pay less than they pay for their cable bill or their cell phone bill a month.
Whatever you spend on cable or cell phones, that $621 billion increase does not mean a savings of $2,500 a year.
So when you divide that across the U.S. population, all Americans are going to see a higher bill per capita from the health care law, not a lower one.
Even without the savings, the president seems to argue that insuring the uninsured is worth some sacrifice. But he promised savings in the process, and that, Brett, will not happen.
Okay, Jim, thank you. Up next, trying to get useful intelligence from a captured terror suspect. But first, here's what some of our Fox affiliates across the country are covering tonight. Fox 4 in Dallas with the controversy over a first-year teacher at an area magnet school who posed for Playboy online in 2011. Fox 10 in Phoenix with an elderly couple who received an unusual birthday card in the mail. It contained about $1,000 worth of meth. And this is a live look at Eden Prairie, Minnesota from KMSP, our affiliate there. The big story there tonight continues to be the 9-year-old boy who snuck onto a Delta flight to Las Vegas. The investigation continues. That's tonight's live look outside the Beltway from Special Report. We'll be right back.